Cho, you are an AI black belt at Google, which essentially makes you one of the smartest fellows in the room, especially when it comes to technology and the future of technology. And you've told us that you actually need a respirator on standby in order to eat and drink on a daily basis. While most of the world is like spiraling about AI taking their jobs or potentially leading us into World War III, nuclear holocaust, you're basically banking on AI as like this personal savior. So just walk us through the optimism that you have for AI, and how do you see AI actually changing the game for your life on a daily basis?
Yeah, let me tell you about one of my previous biggest fears. Just for introduction, I have a rare form or muscular dystrophy that is impacting all my muscles, including respiratory muscles, the diaphragm. And basically, my diaphragm has 16% capacity. That's why I need to control the way I speak. I cannot say long sentences. I cannot drink a lot of water or eat a lot before having sessions like this. Otherwise, I need to be using my machine, which is going to be very painful for me to speak, because as soon as I try to open my nose or mouth, it's going to be pushing air into my face, and that's not funny. And I know that for sure, at some point of my life, I will go through tracheostomy. And when you go through tracheostomy, you cannot speak normally again anymore. I am someone who is passionate about storytelling. I love sharing stories. I love hearing other people's stories and commenting them. And I was afraid of not being able to live that passion anymore, or to sound robotic, to use like a robotic voice or system to speak. And AI, with the current technology that we have today, can allow you with just 5 seconds to clone your own voice and speak naturally to some extent in the future, even after a tracheostomy. In the past, I was saying to myself, the tracheostomy will be the end, and I will be desperately waiting for my death. Like, really.
So just to kind of bring it back to what you were stating earlier about the way that your diaphragm is affected by your muscular dystrophy. So your diaphragm has 15% or 16%, capacity or function. And for folks who aren't aware, the diaphragm is it's literally the muscle that you utilize to draw oxygen into your lungs, like to pull like a vacuum, pulling the air from the outside in through your nasal passage or through your mouth down into your lungs, and then pushing that air back out. So if your diaphragm, it shuts off, you stop breathing. And so this notion of, if you say before you sat down with us, you had a big full belly full of food and you're guzzling down a bunch of water behind that. Is it because the expansion of your internal organs, like your stomach, to make room for that food and to make room for that water, that's putting pressure upon the diaphragm, and therefore the diaphragm's like, it's already enough for me to work when my stomach's empty, but now that it's filled up, it almost negates any usefulness from your diaphragm to begin with. Okay, so wow, that is so wild. And do you have how do you navigate that from a day-to-day basis? Like, how do you know when to eat, when to drink, how much you can take in,
planning
how much you
out the
can't?
logistics of speaking and what will be required of you throughout a day?
Yeah, basically I organize my meetings with colleagues, with customers around that. I have to engineer my life literally around that. And if I eat, then I know for sure that for at least 30 minutes, 1 hour, that I should be using my non-invasive respiratory machine in order to relieve my diaphragm. And I have canceled meetings for that, by the way. And I'm, by the way, very vocal about it. I say I'm really sorry. I don't feel like I can speak now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think we need to be vocal about our needs. We need to be vocal about how we operate. And drawing that barrier allows us to be ourselves, like in the most natural way possible.
Yeah.
Let's say.
Yeah. Don't be too vocal though, like Brock, because Brock once Brock starts, he does not shut up. It's just constant. Brock, it looked like you were raising your hand. Were you trying to get in there to just, again, yammer on and say something else?
Yeah, this is the start of my yammering for the second episode.
All right,
yeah,
here we go.
Here we go. I just help me understand if you could, because what I'm hearing is like, and I'm going to put this incredibly simplistically, do you essentially have to like dehydrate yourself in order to like be able to function in the case of this podcast, in order to like appropriately communicate? Is that what I'm hearing? Because it sounds like it to me.
I mean, I would put it differently. I would put it like I will be, let's say, trying to achieve 2 liters of water a day, which is hard. I think even since my childhood, I have never been able to go beyond that. But the way I see it is that I try to organize my day around this limitation. I know that in the future, this is going to happen differently. By the way, I wanted also to open a very quick parenthesis, like to explain the mechanics of this, how and why my muscles are getting weaker over time. So basically, the name of my disability, the exact name is Ulrich Congenital Muscular Dystrophy, UCMD. And one of the things that makes muscular fibers be very well together is collagen. And basically my body, the mutation makes it produce very bad quality collagen, and that's why muscles just get weaker and weaker over time.
Do you have to supplement with collagen? Is that something that you take on a daily basis, or like
no,
that would really be fucking pointless because your body's just not even gonna.
It is not pointless. It is not useful because basically that cannot help me.
Right. Yeah.
I just as a side note, something that might be interesting. I'll share it with you after we're done. But I was lucky enough a while ago in another series that we were producing to interview a guy named Eric Hoffman, who lives here in Halifax now, but in his earlier in his career was working at Harvard, and in I think it was the late 80s, like 87 or 88, discovered what was the lead on the team that discovered dystrophin. And made the genetic link to why muscular dystrophy sort of like occurs in the population, which is a really fascinating conversation. Cho, I'm curious, like on the AI front of, when I hear you talking about the fear of the tracheostomy and the way that it would affect your voice and very much limit the way that you are able to communicate and tell stories and use your voice, like your voice. I think of it makes me think of growing up and thinking of like Stephen Hawking kind of like communicating through this very robotic sounding stochastic computer robotic voice. Tell us like where we are in terms of how AI has like shifted accessibility in general, like maybe through the lens of the voice, but also through like other ways that AI has and is bringing like accessibility to another level for people with disabilities of all sorts.
100%. So the nice thing about AI today is that it is getting multi-modal. So it can understand and comprehend multiple modalities. So in addition to text, it is able to comprehend audio, images, videos, and depending on, let's say, the type of disability, are we talking about hearing or visual disability, AI can, in real time, decipher for people with those kinds of disabilities, the audio or video content, respectively, depending again of the disability. That is one first thing. I can tell, for example, about a solution that I have built myself for my own needs. Platforms like, am I allowed to name platforms, by the way?
Oh, yeah, sure.
So if you travel, like the golden standard is to go book a hotel or an Airbnb, and Airbnb has accessibility filters, but accessibility in these platforms is like a gambling game. So what is accessible for myself is different from the definition of accessible for someone else with a different disability. And what I did is that I built a system that basically reads the description, sees the images, and then knows what are my exact needs, and then tries to craft an accessibility report. It rates that Airbnb property or listing based on my own particular needs, and then depending on where we are, it drafts or not an email to clarify some points to the host. This is something that I use whenever I want to travel. Another example is another application that I've built, which is public. It's called WheelAir. So every airline company has different wheelchair policies. And I think, Brock, this is very relatable to you. So, I mean, my last trip to the United States would have been canceled if I did not try to negotiate and modify my itinerary. Because one of the connection flights, let's say, had an air carrier model that could not handle or could not, I mean, my wheelchair could not fit into it. So what I did is that I built an AI agent that went to all the airline carriers or companies that were part of the IATA organization that covers, let's say, 80 to 90% of airlines in the world. And then that agent went to the accessibility pages of each of those and built a repository containing the different policies and the different accessibility contacts of those companies.
Wow.
So that was something. And I can share with you the link later. And please let me know what you think about it, Brock. And
I think it's.
I mean, Brock, you just went we just witnessed you go through this not long ago, Brock, when we flew you and your
wife and your chair,
your wife, your chair, you. We flew all three of you out to Calgary.
A little bit of an inside joke.
Inside joke. There wasn't actually his wife, but hey, Taylor too. Fucking let's not tell Taylor the truth. And like I was kind of on the other side of this, coordinating with you to get this booked, and you were flying Air Canada, I believe, and by golly, it's quite the. It is quite the ordeal. And there's a lot of things that you have to consider. Me being an able-bodied person, looking at the way that you have, the hoops that you have to go through, Brock, just to book a flight from Toronto to Calgary. I mean, it was,
and how much easier it is.
Was a fucking headache for me.
And how much easier it is for somebody who it is easier for to jump through hoops, doesn't have to jump through the hoops.
Yes,
it is so hard to translate your accessibility needs from yourself to another person. Even though they want to try to be so accommodating and understanding, it is so hard to translate exactly what you need and exactly the words you need to use in certain terminology. Instead of saying, I need my lift to come with me, I need my wheelchair, you need to change it into the words, it's a medical lift, because that is sort of the key of knowing, hey man, this is not a lift that we can just say, oh, forget it. We don't actually need to bring it. But you need to use a language that's understandable to the general public and the universe. And so changing it to make it more of an aggressive term and saying, no, this is my medical equipment, which is accessible to my daily living. And it is so difficult to translate from a person who might be trying, but in the end, they just can't understand, because here comes the hot take of the day, but they don't live it. They don't understand it. So you can't expect them to when they don't live it and they don't understand it.
And
well, sorry, go ahead, Joe.
A quick comment on that, by the way. I agree with you, putting the word medical into it makes it more serious and makes your life depend on it. But sometimes that can work against you. And I lived this personally. Yeah. So when you say it is medical, So people think about everything regulatory. They will be thinking about laws. They will be thinking about the safety. They will be thinking about the standards of that medical equipment, and they will just say no. I mean, let me give you an example, and this is something very recent. It's actually about my tomorrow's trip to London. I mean, I'm going to London for the MCP conference, which is an AI conference for the first time in my life to London. And I mean, I'm that kind of a person, that throw themselves into the thing. So I bought the train tickets. I wanted to avoid going to London by plane because, it is very hard when you are in a wheelchair. You have a lot of transfers that could be painful to you, and you could have your wheelchair risk to be damaged, etc. So I bought the train tickets and they were not refundable tickets, by the way, to force myself into trying to find a fucking solution for the hotel, and then for the lift, the medical lift. Okay. So I was talking to the hotel guys, and then they talk to you when as soon as you say medical lift, we are sorry, sir, we don't accept that. We are sorry, sir, we don't accept that. So then I had to reverse engineer it. I had to think, as an engineer, you have a black box, and then you want to reverse engineer it, and you want to do the problem backwards. So what I did, after 5 days of trying to call, I can tell you without exaggerating that I've called up to 50 hotels, and nobody was understanding my language. Okay, let me just add more context, because for me to have an accessible room, I need them to accept to reception a medical lift from a provider on my behalf before my arrival. And I need the bed, to be a 4-legged bed with enough gap and clearance compared to the soil, so that the feet of the medical lift gets into the bed, so that I can use it to be transferred from wheelchair to bed, or from bed to wheelchair. And finally, I needed them to accept to add an extra bed for my caregiver, right? Because I wouldn't be comfortable sharing, obviously, the bed with my caregiver.
Yeah, right. Unless you're Brock. Yeah, Brock. Yeah, which in that case, because Brock, caregiver, wife, it's all the same thing to this guy.
Except it's not. It's not, just so you know. It's not the same thing.
No, Joe, it is. It is. You listen to me, don't listen to him. Cho, I mean, talking about the misunderstanding or the ways that people don't really get it. It's making me want to kind of circle back to an earlier time in your life. So you live in France, but you are from Tunisia, correct?
Yes.
Walk us through what life was like in your youth, growing up in Tunisia, growing up in a country that is very different from the experience that we have here in Canada. From a cultural perspective, what does life with muscular dystrophy look like for someone who's born in Tunisia? Say, what year were you born? How old are you?
Yeah, so I'm 34 years old. First of all, I was born in 1991 in Tunisia, and by the way, I lived in Tunisia until the age of, if I'm not wrong, 21. Yeah. And what I can tell you is that people are very, let's say, tactile. They are very, they're trying to be very helpful. There is a lot of good intentions. But there is a lack of, let's say, a functional system that normalizes and standardizes accessibility everywhere. When I was going to school, my first year elementary school teacher was afraid of me being present there. I was an innocent 6 years old boy, and I wasn't understanding why she was being mean to me. I understood it later because my parent told me about the battle that they had to have for me to keep being schooled in regular education in my homeland.
Oh, wow.
But she basically wanted me to be in a specialized, let's say, center, and she mistaken my physical disability into a cognitive disability. So she on purpose was ignoring me whenever I was having the answer. Whenever I was raising the hand to answer, she was ignoring me. And whenever I was not sure, she was on purpose trying to ask me so that I'm blocked, just to prove what she had in mind about me.
Yeah.
And by the way,
God, that must have felt like being a CNN reporter in the presidential briefings.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean that's a pretty common. That's quite a common experience. I think even here in North America with things like muscular dystrophy and cerebral palsy, that there's often an assumption that there's a cognitive aspect to somebody's disability because of the way that they present physically. That there's something going on cognitively when there really isn't.
Yeah, Cho, like obviously you knew that you were like, I know I'm not like I know I'm not dumb. I know the answers here. How did that? I mean, did that have an effect on your confidence or the way that, like, you viewed yourself, or and also like did that have an effect on the way that your peers treated you?
Yeah, I mean, I think for my peers, I was yet another kid, right? So it's really adults. Like when you become an adult, you easily develop, prejudice. I'm not sure if that's the right word in English. But and bias against different people. For kids, you're just yet another kid, and they play with you, and you're just friends, and you play together. But for I knew that I was not them, and I think if there is a message that I could say here to every parent of a kid with a disability, be it like a physical, hearing, or a non-visible disability, and I am a father of kids with non-visible disability, and we can talk about it later. When you are raising your kids, do not make them feel lacking anything. I mean, my father, my mother were always treating me as someone who is going to have a bright future. I was raised with that fake feeling that I am entitled to something. I'm going to be honest. And that's why I have always thought that whenever I embrace something, I need to be the best at it. And parents' education is very important. And I think also what helped a lot, I mean, my mother and parents, both of my parents came from like a poor village in Tunisia. So they were not able to complete all their studies. And they wanted absolutely to have their kids achieve university degrees. And I was the first kid, so no pressure at all, right? So the stakes were so high.
And just for, I mean, you sort of stated it there. And I think for people to really like wrap their head around how you really seem to have lived true to that thought, that statement of like, I'm gonna be the best that I can be at everything that I do. I said it earlier, but that you work as an AI black belt with Google. I mean, that sort of sounds just like kind of a cool way to describe like you're a professional, you're a pro at AI. But there's an AI black belt is an actual. It's not just some cool way of describing like, yeah, I know how to work AI. It's an actual like, I guess like defined technical like proficiency of being an AI black belt. Can you walk us through what does that mean?
Yeah, I mean, I get this question a lot on social media, mainly on LinkedIn. Like, what does it mean exactly? So we are a select team of people who are able both to dive deep into technical topics, but also we are people that have the business acumen to talk with CFOs, CXOs, CEOs, etc. So, I mean, you can find a lot of technical people, but the people that are able to translate that into business value and actually talking to executives and decision makers, those people, let's say, or those skills are fewer among technical people. So that's why they call us black belts, because we work on, let's say, mission critical, high value, high stakes AI initiatives with the biggest strategic customers of Google.
And like to get to that position, obviously takes some hard work. How did you end up? How did you end up in this space? And has your disability sort of played a role in creating unforeseen obstacles to get you to where you are today, which seems to be like sort of at the pinnacle of like where someone might want to be if they're in the field that you're in?
Yeah, I needed to be honest with myself. I needed to be realistic, because before working into AI, I was in a completely different field. I was in oil and gas. I was an electrical engineer, and I was working in an environment that was not necessarily accessible to people with physical constraints and conditions. And back in 2019, I was thinking, like, I was enjoying what I did and I was among the best people in what I did in the past. But I knew that at some point in my career, if I really wanted to become an executive or to become like a better positioned person, I needed to be able to travel to electrical installations that are offshore, that are in the desert, or into like icy places, etc. And I knew that those places are not accessible to me. And I knew that in 5 maybe years, if I continued in that career choice, I will be seeing a blocker. So I anticipated that blocker and I built what I call the, let's say, the career pivot framework. People need to be honest about what they want to do and what they want to pursue. And I think at any point of your age or your life, you can rewrite your personal legend, let's say. And I was thinking with myself, like, why is General Electric paying me? I mean, what was I good at? So I did like a situation analysis. What are my skills? What I am good at? What I'm paid for? And I thought that I was paid because I have very good mathematical skills, because in my previous domain, I was modeling mathematical systems in order to, not physical systems, sorry, mathematically, in order to control them. That was named control theory in electrical engineering. And then I said to myself, I want to go to a field where I can build on that mathematical foundation. Then I wanted that new field to allow me to be able to work remotely. So it needed for me to be in the digital realm rather than the physical realm. And finally, I needed a field where I could be an entrepreneur. I see my life as a company, because entrepreneurs are people who are trying to answer or who are people that are facing problems that no one else has faced, and that are trying to find solutions that have, when you are an entrepreneur, you are often misunderstood by people, right? That's literally my life. And I thought that at some point of my life, I want to build a company, a venture, right? So it is easier to build a company in the digital realm rather than the energy or the oil and gas sector, because that needs massive, let's say, capital to start with, right? And then I did that career pivot. I decided that AI is the go-to field. One point before I forget, in the third step of that framework, after knowing your skills, building, let's say, your spec of what should be the next career move, I did what I call the crash test. So before going to AI, I needed to make sure that I will be enjoying coding. So I spent 15 euros, that's literally the price of a pizza here, on a Python course to see if I'm going to fall in love with that. So if someone is willing to change career because of a health condition or something, they need to crash test it before jumping into it.
I'm glad you said that. And I was kind of planning on bringing this up because a big part of us inviting Brock to be here today, not only to fill in for Brian, but was also, it's kind of like an intervention because, Brock, I know that you've been talking a lot about trying to figure out what you want to do for the future, and that you've been toying with this idea of starting your own OnlyFans, and you just aren't sure like if it's going to hit. And I just think that this is it, dude. This is the moment. I hope what Cho just said is what you needed to hear to fucking take that deep dive, dude, into the adult entertainment world.
Yeah, right after this, I am starting the fans only pages. What we're
learning. Fans only. That's right. Yes.
The first stream.
Brock's actually starting his own platform. It's
the first stream starts now. Cho, when you like 2019, I mean, like in the public consciousness, I feel like AI started with when ChatGPT like came out. Like we have Brian, who's not here with us today, has kind of had his finger on the AI pulse for a little longer than that. So, like we were kind of tuned in a little bit earlier than that by way of having Brian around. How did you, going from this career in oil and gas, like what was your entry point into just kind of having your finger on the pulse enough to know that this was a way or a direction that was going to be kind of like going to be growing in the future?
Absolutely. That's a very good question. I would say that AI was deep impacting our lives way before ChatGPT. But I mean, we as human beings, we tend to fantasize around systems that look like us, that speak like us. ChatGPT was impressive because it was able to comprehend questions and provide plausible natural language answers. But your email spam filter is AI. Your Netflix recommender system is AI. Your Amazon warehouse optimizing the stock in order to guarantee that one-day delivery or same-day delivery, that's AI, because they need to predict what is the demand on every product to optimize their stores. So when you are an engineer and when you have the mathematical foundation for that, like basically AI is about, building statistical models that capture patterns into data. And in my old field, I was capturing statistical patterns of physical systems and building those models in order to control them. That can be an elevator, that can be a drone, that can be a power conversion system from like gas to electricity. So by being into the field, I was somehow close to that. And I also always try to be curious about what is happening outside of my field. I was discussing with peers who work in software, in AI, etc. And now I developed a lot of interest for example, into quantum physics, because I know that there is always new fields. You need to be curious, right? So and you need to talk to people. You need always to be out of your comfort zone if you really want to be relevant, let's say.
I mean, it'd be very cool to be like. I feel like I know that we're mostly we're more on like the health side of things here, but like AI is a fascination with like all of us, and I feel like Google in particular. There's something about Demis Hassabis that is like particularly fascinating. With like AlphaFold and like all the
okay, dude, you're starting to sound like Brian. Shut the fuck up.
I know. I just want to.
Save it for the AI podcast.
The AI podcast. That's right. Yeah, we need
AlphaFold.
I'll start it with you with my fans only page. Okay, that's
tokens.
What we'll do.
Yeah, thank you, Brock. Thank you.
Speaking of fans only, Cho, I know that you. So I mean, you mentioned you have 3 kids, and which is fascinating, and would love to dive into that. But also, one thing that I would really love to talk to you about is that I know that you're putting yourself out there on the market. The dating is a thing that you've obviously have prior experience with. What is the like? Just give me the. I want to get some like I want to I think what the kids call aura farming. I want to get some notes from you. What is the quadriplegic AI genius Riz factor? Like, what is the thing that you tell someone you're pursuing about yourself to get yourself to get your wheels in the door? I guess some might say.
Yeah.
To a date.
So the first thing is that I will put it this way. First of all, everyone can be rejected by a potential partner for whatever reason. So I was not afraid of being rejected. I knew that wheelchair and disability is a barrier, clearly. And I don't want to go into inspiration porn, but I'm trying to be authentic here. What I was thinking of it is that this is a fucking filter. Because when you have a very good situation, especially like you are an engineer into like I was valedictorian of my French engineering school. I did a double degree in the United States. I did Georgia Tech. I was a 4 GPA. I was like figuring my life very well, at least career wise and financial wise. And I thought of that as a filter when it comes to people who are. I mean, first of all, I thought of that as a filter, and then when I started dating. I figured out that people, as I said initially, can have biases. And I needed to be fucking clear about how things work. So it would be weird, of course, to say it in the first date, but I had to be clear that my organ was working, right? My gun was working. I needed to be clear about it. I needed to be obvious about it. I mean,
Brock, he's talking about his wiener, Brock.
Yes. I
You looked like you were zoning out there for a second.
No, I got it. It seems to be the number one question everyone wants to know about on the first date. It's the fucking strangest thing ever, but it is.
Hey, it's a filter.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how, let's say, obvious should I be about it. I can even say, I mean,
Get obvious, dude. Yeah, fucking show it to us. Let's see it work.
Get
get it. Whip it out.
You need to precise one that it works, and also how long that it works, because how long matters a lot as well, right? So
right, sure, yeah.
And that could be for a whole other reason too. How long it works, it doesn't.
Yeah, hold on. Are we talking about what length are we talking about? Time or measurement? Or both? Space and time.
Wow.
Space and time. Yeah, 4D. Yeah, let's be crazy. Yeah.
And so, it's, I mean, first of all, like, I don't think like, I don't think you have to preface that with like, I don't want to get all inspiration porny because it is one of those things. I don't think it is inspiration porn. I think inspiration porn is a great name for your fans only, Brock. But I think that, it's one of those things that is less about sounding like inspiration porn and more about just clarifying for so many people that just have that literally, again, like your teacher in Tunisia who just thinks, well, he's in a wheelchair. He's probably not bright enough to understand what we're doing in class. Another version of that is very common today is like, oh, well, he's got muscular dystrophy. He most certainly doesn't have a sex life or a desire to have any sort of like sexual engagement with anybody else because, well, wait, because what? Because why? Right? Like why do people just like assume that? Or if they're not thinking that actively, it's almost like this subconscious sort of assumption that exists there, and I find it very, very bizarre, very weird. It's kind of
it
the
would
way
be like
think,
surprising if you found out that you do have a sex life.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Rather than surprising that you don't.
I mean, one thing that I can tell you, by the way, about this is that whenever people see me outside with the kids, they think that I am their uncle. No one would assume that they are my kids, even though they are literally looking like me exactly, right?
Yeah.
So that's one thing that I wanted to say here. And by the way, like I think a week ago, I wrote a huge post about like exactly this topic. A lot of personalities are now being involved into this, Epstein thing. I'm not sure if this is like a topic that we can talk about here.
I mean, we can talk about it, but I would say maybe don't say anything if you went to his island. That's probably keep that to yourself, because it's bad. It's bad.
No,
it's bad.
I'm not exposing my own island. I have another island which I'm not going to talk.
Right.
Anyway,
just making sure.
Let's cut this off. Anyway, so people mocked a lot of the people that were mentioned, in those files, and I think that the type of mockery that attained Stephen Hawking was different. Let me explain myself. People, for example, were shocked that famous philosophers were into that, or famous billionaires were into that island. But when they were talking about Hawking, like, why the fuck was he even there? Why was he wasting his time? Was he just doing this and that? I'm not. I mean, basically, all of the mockery was about his body and his ability to even, like, how dare he to be in something like this? Of course, we don't know exactly what he did there. Apparently, he did some black hole conferences. Anyway, but basically,
Taylor, that was not a euphemism.
That was not a euphemism.
That was not a euphemism for anal.
It really sounded like
no.
Yeah. So basically, I wrote about like society deep into our unconscious. We put disabled people into two binary buckets. You are either a saint, a scientist, a genius, or a source of pity. You cannot be just a fucking human being who can be evil, who can be weak, who can be vulnerable, who can cheat or lie, or, So I try to be vocal about that. And by the way, I got a lot of critique. People were telling me that I was whitelisting, or at least whitewashing, let's say, the deeds that were happening there. but I am vocal about it because people need to understand, by the way, that, we are just human beings. We can be cheating. We can be honest. We can be vulnerable. We can be, we are humans with all the complexity that means. That's one thing, by the way. And the second thing that I said is that disability is not something that is very far away from you. I mean, I can just now build a statistical model that proves to you that the probability of being permanently disabled or having a spouse that is permanently disabled or a kid or a parent in the next 10 years, it's 59%.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So if you take, the Social Security statistics for the disability, the probability of having a father, a mother, a spouse, or someone else, or kids is 59%. So it's more than half, right? So it is not as far as we think about it.
Brock, did you saw you raising your hand there? Did you have a question about black holes?
I couldn't. No. I'm staying away from the black hole conversation. But I could not agree with you more on this. And you're so right in the sense that either we're geniuses, a saint, or we're a pity party. And the add on to that is, if we're in one of those categories, well, certainly our partners for being with somebody with a disability has to automatically be in the saint category, because we, as the disabled person, we don't have to deal with anything negative with them, because we should just be happy they're with us. Like it is truly one category or the other. And it's scary how it's like, well, the able-bodied person is the saint here. It couldn't possibly be the person with a disability.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Christ, Brock, you tried to burn your house down when you were a kid, and everyone just thought,
I know.
Couldn't be that kid. Couldn't be that guy. He's in a wheelchair.
Yeah,
I went from a saint to an
I can start a fire.
arsonist immediately. It was
That's
great.
right. Yeah.
So when you like with your you mentioned you have kids.
Yeah.
I believe is it 3 kids?
Yeah, 3 kids. Yeah.
I mean, I have 3 kids. It's a lot. There's a lot to do. How do you how do you navigate just like the just the fullness of all of that with your partner, with obviously having physical limitations, and like how you approach like the things that you can or maybe can't do with your kids because of physical limitations? Like, how does that affect you? How do you approach all that?
Absolutely. So first of all, I was afraid of parenthood in the beginning. Like, how were my kids going to see me? Am I legit to be a father? Are they gonna be shy from me taking them out of school or something, right? So, and kids are fantastic because, as I told you, like when I was kid, my peers did not have biases. I was just yet another kid who happens to sit on a chair, right? So, and kids accept and naturally live with the fact their father has some mobility and physical constraints. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that they develop a reflex to automatically comment in the street when we are having a walk, between quotes, because I have wheels. They're saying like, Dad, this is accessible, this is not accessible. Oh, they should have built a ramp here. So I think my kids in the future will be one of the biggest accessibility advocates because they know it, they know how it is, etc. I find new ways to play with them if you want. So they enjoy riding my wheelchair, being on my knees, riding the wheelchair. Sometimes when they got a little bit older, I have been able to teach them how to drive it, so they enjoy that as well. And I have even, I cannot be, in the soil playing with them puzzle or something. So one way for me to be present with them, everywhere, and this is, by the way, one of the fun usages of AI that I had is that I created a 3D model of myself in my wheelchair using Google's Nano Banana. So basically, I generated different perspectives of that 3D figurine, and then I 3D printed it, 3 copies of it, and my kids have a Dad figurine that they can play with, along with their Spider-Man, Iron Man, blah blah blah. And I'm always the superhero, of course.
Oh, that's very sweet. And how old are you kids?
So the oldest one is going to be 7 years old in June. The second is 5, and the third is 3.
Yeah.
And what kind, like, you mentioned that you go out in public, people kind of make assumptions that you're the uncle, the fun uncle in the wheelchair. How, what kinds of interactions do you have with the other, their peers' parents or other folks? Like, do you find you have to, like, you have to put effort into explaining the situation to people that you meet, or like, what does that look like from a parent and peers situation?
You know what? I learned that I should not explain. I just like screw it. I mean, I'm the father. These are my kids, and I just have to impose myself. Let's put it this way. And I am even one of the parent representatives of my kids' school, so I am defending my kids' rights. Also other parents' kids' rights, right? So people are confident into I have been elected by other parents because they saw how dedicated I was for, my kids are neurodivergent, by the way. They have an invisible disability. And, let me share with you a personal thought that I had. Disability, when you have it on yourself, you kind of control it. You kind of control how you feel about it. You kind of control how you can defend yourself from biases, from people, etc. But when it impacts your own kid, this is like really different because you don't have control over their feeling, over how they will live it, over how people will interact with it. And you are afraid and you try to project about, so that was like, when I learned that my first kid was autistic, that was very painful for me to learn. It was a shock, to be honest. And let me share with you something. I have never felt sad for myself being on a wheelchair. I said to myself, that's how life is, and I need to optimize around that, right? Because as I told you, I had control over my life. But that news was very tough for me to handle, the news of my kid being autistic. And one of the things that I found resourceful when it comes to educating kids with special needs is that I was inspired by my parents' dedication to my own education. And I say to myself, I mean, when I went to study abroad in France, engineering, and in the United States, my father stopped everything to go everywhere on earth with me, like France, Switzerland, Poland, Georgia. And I think that no matter that I can do to my kid, I cannot achieve that standard that my father did to me. And that motivates me always to do more and more and more.
I love that. What would you say is the biggest thing that muscular dystrophy has taken away from you?
That's a very good question. One thing that I would have never, in a parallel universe, if I was able-bodied, one thing that I would have loved to experiment is dancing. I would have loved to dance. That's something that I really am curious about. I'm not curious about walking. I'm not curious about playing soccer. But dancing is something that I love the fact that you artistically move your body. And that's something that I would have very much wanted to try.
And is there a specific type of dance that you envision when you think about this parallel universe?
Not necessarily, like anything that allows you to express, feelings across like rhythmic movements with music. Yeah,
but I would argue you can do that though, right? Like I'm sitting here talking to you right now, and you're moving your arms, and you're moving your head, and you're moving your shoulders. So like I understand the sentiment, but also
because you mean like I mean the way that you see people who are not in wheelchairs dancing.
You can, Jeremy, but it's
I jam out in my seat. But you like do you I guess to be more specific, do you mean dancing with another? sharing the space.
Maybe sharing the space, absolutely, or dancing in a group.
Sure.
Yeah, break dance, ballet, all these things I find beautiful, right? So that synchronization with other people, swarm of people dancing to show an artistic portrait. Yeah, that's something that I would have very much loved to try. And by the way, that being said, I went to nightclubs and I went to parties, and I dance with my basically limited body. And people, they are drunk. They try to be nice to you, like, you belong to here, they say. You're very nice. You will go to paradise. And you know what? That doesn't hurt me anymore. I say to myself, don't give a fuck about what people think about you, whether they pity you or they think that you are a saint. Deep inside who you are, and you're here, and I just stopped commenting other people's thoughts about myself.
Yeah. What would you say is the biggest thing that muscular dystrophy has given you?
Time. When I was a kid, I was not able to play physical games, so I was very analytical. I was observing the world around me. I was observing people around me, how they speak, how they move their body, the nature of the relationships, the power balance that gave me that mix of both emotional and analytical intelligence. And this is really the exact mixture that is expected in my current role as a black belt. The second thing is time management. I think when you depend on other people to wake up or to sleep, you don't want, for example, your father to be waiting for you at 4 a.m. trying to prepare for your exam. So you try to respect your father, who is sacrificing literally his life and his time for you. And you try to achieve the most things possible into that limited amount of time that you have. Because I wake up when he wakes up and I sleep when he sleeps, right? So time management is something. The third thing, pedagogy, I think. Now my father is not my main caregiver. I rely on a team of 6 full-time caregivers. And this, and by the way, I depend on the French aid to be able to pay those salaries. And unfortunately, these kind of jobs are not very well recognized financially here. And there is a lot of turnover, one thing. And given the nature of the job, and also given the constraints of people, because if a woman, for example, is pregnant, then it won't be able to do night shifts anymore, right? So I learned the hard way how to explain very mundane stuff to people very frequently. And that made me also be able to explain very complex technical stuff to business people as well. And finally, risk mitigation. When you are an engineer, one of the most important skills is that given a project, what are the possible skills and what are the possible mitigation plans? And I think this is going to be relatable to Brock. When you are traveling, you are basically building the exact same thing. What are the risks? What is my plan B? What is my mitigation plan? So that becomes kind of second nature when you are disabled. Of course, I'm not saying that disability is a blessing. It is a very hard thing to live. And I don't wish to anyone to be in a physical disability. And I thought that, let me share another thought that I forgot to tell you about. Like, before even starting to date, one thing that I wanted to know is, first, am I fertile? So I did a spermogram to know if I am able to have kids, which of course was the case. I'm able to do kids. And the second thing is, if I ever happen to have kids, will my kids be disabled? Because, by the way, when I was in Tunisia, I had the bad diagnosis. My disability was not diagnosed correctly. I got the name of my disability at the age of 23 in France. And I knew that the disability mechanism was recessive, the genetic mechanism. So if your partner does not have the mutation, then your kids do not have the physical disability. And between me and you and everyone listening to this later, if it was autosomal and dominant, I would have decided just to adopt and not to have kids of mine, because I know for sure that I was able to accept it. I'm not sure that my kid will accept the fact that I got them with the certitude or the certainty that they will be disabled.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Cho, I mean, you're such a fascinating person to talk to, and I can see why you've got that black belt status, because you have a great way of weaving in and out of engaging story, but also laying out the details in a really digestible way. All of that on top of the fact that English isn't even your first language, which is just so awesome. This has been a real treat to be able to sit down and get some insight into the way that your life works and how you've turned into the person that you are today. How can people, if people are curious about the work that you're doing, or want to follow you, how can people find you?
Yeah, I'm present in all platforms, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, X. I have also a Calendly link that I will share with you later, where I mentor for free people with disabilities who want to do careers in tech. I have also my own mentorship program for professional people. I'm happy to share with you the link later, and people can find me on those platforms.
Well, I'll toss the links to all that stuff in the show notes for people if they wanna follow up and they want to reach out. Cho, thank you so much, man. Brock, do you have anything to add here, all the way from your fans only studio in Ontario?
By the way, let's partner on that, Brock. I'm happy to build the AI recommender system for you to recommend content to your people.
Dude, hell yeah, Brock! You just found yourself a partner.
I got a partner. It's right here. I want to say to you that I was blessed to be able to. One of the roles I have here with Sickboy is that I sift through some of the applications, and yours was one of the ones we found. And one of the things that stuck out to us was just your positive nature, and I can relate so much to what you're doing. So I commend you with all the work that you're doing. I'm jealous of your black belt status. I will never be that person, but I just thank you for just being so open and honest, and I'm so grateful that we were able to speak with you. It was really great.
I want to thank you, and I want to thank the team for giving me a platform to talk about two topics that are a passion for me: disability, AI. If I have a last word to say, is that I want to say to every parent with a disabled kid, be it physical or an invisible disability, invest in your kid's education, because when you step away, no one is reliable. Siblings are not reliable. The system is not reliable, but their skills, their education, and their ability to be financially autonomous is somehow reliable. And I urge everyone who is disabled and everyone who has a connection to a disabled person to be an ally and an advocate to this cause, because an accessible world is an accessible world to everyone. Because as I said earlier, the likelihood of having a very close person, including yourself, have a permanent disability is 59%, as per my statistical calculations. And you want to give them a gift by having an accessible world for them to live and be who they are.
Cheers to that, man. Thank you so much, Cho.
Thank you.